Let's connect to chatquen.ai right now. Let's go ahead and open it. As you see, it looks like ChatGPT. So what are the differences? Well, as usual, here we find the models we've already described. There's the option to have a temporary chat. Here, in any case, I logged in with my email. But in any case, it's free. In short, we have all the models available to us already without any kind of plan. The interface is the same since we have the ability to upload documents, upload images, upload videos, or upload audio files, activate thinking, and also enable search on Google for your convenience. Thinking, what does that mean? We have the option by clicking here to control the maximum length of the specified words that we can generate, in this case measured in tokens. 38,912 tokens, which correspond to roughly 30,000 words. So we have the ability to generate text up to this length for now. Naturally, I would avoid using all these tokens, but I would focus the response so that it's fairly concise, about halfway. Additionally, just like on ChatGPT, we have the option to activate the web developer to generate pages in-depth research, which would be the equivalent of deep research artifacts, which would be the equivalent of Canvas, image generation, video code generation, make me a plan, news, analyze image, summarize the text, get advice, help me write, brainstorming. The options are more or less the same, but let's see how Qwen actually approaches these things differently. Our inputs, and to understand the difference, we are going to paste the advanced prompt we used on ChatGPT and see how it will respond. Let's just hit send. We've activated the first model, Qwen 3 235B, and you can see how it's much faster than ChatGPT in responding. Let's see how it actually tackles the topic. Hi guys, today we're talking about something that concerns all of us, climate change. Have you ever gone outside and noticed that it's much hotter than usual, or that it's raining in a strange way? Maybe with very strong thunderstorms. Well, these things are happening more and more often, not just here, but all over the world. Of course, here it goes on to talk about greenhouse gases, about the fact that they trap the sun's heat. As we've seen so far, the important consequences like the melting of glaciers, the rising sea level, the fact that we can take action with small everyday gestures, and then it cites scientific sources just as we requested. We ask for a translation in English, French, and Spanish as always. And then let's look at one of the main features of Qwen, which I particularly like. It's truly unique. We can see how it translated the entire text that we originally generated in Italian and into English, the French language, and Spanish. What is the actual peculiarity? That if we don't truly understand a certain topic, for example, for a certain sentence, we can simply do this. Let's take, for example, carbon dioxide. Suppose we don't know what it is, we go and select it, and automatically a menu will appear, copy, ask, or explain. So I will click on explain, and the message will automatically start. Explain this section in detail, carbon dioxide. That's it. It starts talking. Of course, let's talk about it. It means carbon dioxide, and it explains it to us. You can clearly see that from a learning perspective, which is exactly what we're actually interested in. Having the opportunity to have direct control over this kind of thing. So we don't necessarily have to go and ask questions, but it's enough for us to just select and click on explain it to me, and it will actually generate a text that simply explains what we don't understand. We can interact by asking, for example, for more concrete examples. And perhaps this is Qwen's strength, namely the ability to explain these kinds of topics in a fairly natural way. Here it manages to empathize with the discussion, because very often it breaks things down. In this case, we see what carbon dioxide is, where it comes from, and why it causes temperatures to rise. So it not only explains what it is, but actually integrates it into the discussion, really helping us understand what it's about. And I believe this is truly one of its most important features. Exactly. As I was saying, personally, when I need to learn new concepts, I prefer to have a conversation with Qwen to go deeper rather than with ChatGPT, because I find the dialogue much more natural and I'm able to understand the topics better. Also in the way it expresses itself, because it communicates in a much more natural and conversational way, almost as if it were a real dialogue. It's true that we can also set these things up on ChatGPT, but those are extra steps, and this falls within the scope of the Qwen project as a much simpler system for those. It's not practical enough, because on ChatGPT we see immediately how we can also customize the conversation. Let's connect for just a moment. All we need to do is go to our profile, go to Customize ChatGPT, and here we have the option to personalize it. So how should it address us? What job do we actually do? What kind of interaction should ChatGPT use? With a range of options: conversational, witty, straightforward, encouraging. So basically, yes, it's true, we can customize it, but these are always extra steps that we have to take. For example, here it asks if there's something it should know about you. This perspective, let's say, also falls within the realm of memory. Let's not forget that ChatGPT can remember certain things about us. We can even ask it. Now, let's see how to do it. Let's go ahead to settings, then to personalization, and then memory, manage memory. And here are the saved memories. Simply where it says, ChatGPT tries to remember most of your chats, but over time, it might forget something. Saved memories are never forgotten. For example, it knows my name, simply that I am a technician, that I am an architect, that I am structuring a course on how to leverage artificial intelligence for studying, which is exactly what this is about. And well, anyway, another piece of information, I prefer to use TradingView to monitor the value of the S&P 500 index. So very often, even when I ask finance-related questions, it knows that I prefer the parameters or the answers it gives me to come from a specific site, since that's the one I use. So I already know how to just read all the available data. Let's go back to Qwen and see that, on the other hand, when you go to Qwen, the settings are pretty basic, meaning the type of theme, in this case, the language, whether we want notifications or not, the type of interface, whether we want it to address us by our username or with the widescreen mode it offers. As you can clearly see here in the background, the text itself is displayed in full screen mode, covering the entire visible area. And then other details like generation, automatic text, and generation of chat tags, copying and pasting long text as a file. In case we simply need to paste a text into the chat as a reference, it smoothly transmits large external response blocks. In short, basically, it doesn't have any customization or personalization capability at all. Here's how ChatGPT, but it's much simpler. So it manages to decide on its own, and in my opinion, with the release of Qwen 3.2.35b, these capabilities have improved. They have improved significantly, so it really manages. You can have a really pleasant conversation. Here's the only thing where it falls short. Actually, Qwen is still lacking in image generation. If, for example, we try to generate an image, let's use the usual example because we already have a reference benchmark, which is an astronaut on Mars wearing a yellow inflatable duck. Let's go ahead and write it right now. Certainly the generation speed is much faster, significantly. It manages to efficiently generate the image at a higher speed. However, as you can see, the quality, well, aside from actually from a realistic point of view, it's not like ChatGPT, but even the composition, well, it doesn't really make much sense. There are often issues like, for example, this duck, which is not understandable. Let's say how it works. Whereas ChatGPT on the first try managed to generate the image of this astronaut on Mars with an inflatable duck. that was actually, in fact, a proper and genuine life preserver. So from this point of view, when it comes to images, I still wouldn't rely on ChatGPT just yet. At this point in time, so that's always important to remember, we always need to understand when to use what, precisely to avoid wasting time, because if we don't know what ChatGPT is capable of when generating images, we might end up generating an image on Qwen instead and waste time with generation after generation just to fix mistakes. So the fact that one tool is more powerful than another allows us to speed up our workflow. So we personally know that if we have to tackle a certain topic we don't know much about, and therefore need a lot of examples as quickly as possible, Qwen manages to be much more efficient than ChatGPT, whereas for image generation, or in any case for certain other types of input and output data, ChatGPT still holds the lead. Let's do one last test. Let's take one of the questions we've already asked ChatGPT. Let's go ahead and begin a brand new chat. Whenever you're ready, just let me know. Let's exit the image generator, maybe simply activate the search function and type. Can you explain to me how American tariffs work? What economic impact does this have on Europe? Let's hit send. We can see that a menu is opening up here on the right. This menu is the source menu, meaning it shows us also through notes, which are basically where this information was originally taken from. And it explains American tariffs are taxes applied on products imported to US. They are used as an economic policy tool to protect domestic industry or to rebalance trade deficits. And here it tells us that it gets the information from the first note, so from TG24 Sky. Then it explains the European Union's countermeasures and the reduction in sales, again referencing where it got its information from. Another very interesting aspect in research and experimentation are the suggestions it gives us to further explore the topic. In this case, what are the main consequences of American tariffs on the global economy? How is Europe countering the effects of the tariffs imposed by the United States? Which industrial sectors in Europe are most affected by American tariffs? So it also gives us that. In this case, it's essentially a prompt encouraging you to further explore the topic. This is the reason, or one of the reasons, why I actually definitely prefer Qwen for learning new concepts. Let's start from a fundamental premise. When we delve deeper into a topic, we need to be curious. Certainly, the way Qwen simply approaches a new topic, so it goes to stimulate our curiosity. Fundamentally, for me, that's the added value that makes me prefer it over ChatGPT, which instead simply gives us the answer without actually prompting us with further questions. That's why, basically, what does it do? It stimulates us by taking the initiative, by proposing new questions itself. And for me, that's the secret. If we want to really delve deeper into a topic we don't know, and we can apply this approach to all types of topics. Whenever we want to explore any subject in depth, whether it's a science topic, a history topic, or any other topic, and even in everyday life, a particular piece of news, maybe we don't fully understand financial news. As you can see, Qwen supports us, stimulates us, and helps us understand certain points by really sparking our curiosity and engaging our minds. Personally, I repeat, I much prefer it. Now let's see what other tools we can integrate between ChatGPT and Qwen to actually delve deeper into certain topics. If we already have some sources, and so we start talking about LM notebooks, and finally focus for a moment on the slightly more academic aspect, which in any case can also be addressed with this type of tools such as Qwen and ChatGPT. But with Storm AI, we know we have some points of reference that are not just Google News as far as sources are concerned. In this case, as you can see, that's fine. The first one is still Sky TG24, so it could be considered a reliable source. The others, however, are websites we know nothing about. So basically, if we retrieve information from the web, we then need to further verify this information because it might have taken information from a website that does not have any particular authority. And so we can also question what it actually says, or maybe it's just a bit biased. In short, it doesn't have the objectivity that, especially in the academic field, is quite necessary. We will actually see how Storm AI instead uses university research from Stanford and gives us what is truly a scientific perspective on the matter. We have a bit of an idea of how to use the main artificial intelligences. So when to use ChatGPT, when to use Qwen, let's now get into the specifics with Notebook LM and Storm AI.